Okay, let's get started today. I welcome everyone to the short introduction webinar for record validation. Today's webinar, we're going to talk about record validation, of course, but we first do a quick introduction of Plauti, the company behind record validation. Then my colleague Ruben is going to be doing a live demonstration of the tool itself. And afterwards, we have a Q&A session where you can ask any question about record validation itself. It takes about 30 to 45 minutes approximately, depending on the Q&A. Feel free to ask your questions via the Q&A box in the Zoom panel. So there's a Q&A button on the Zoom, which you can use to type in your questions, and then I can answer them directly via the chat, or I will mark them that it will be answered live in the Q&A section. So who are we? I'm on the left side, I'm Stan. I'm the CEO and founder of Plauti and the apps Duplicate Check for Salesforce and Record Validation. And on the right side, we have Ruben, who's going to be doing the live demonstration today, and he's a product owner of our team. So Plauti, we are a Dutch company existing already since 2011, and we create data quality applications for Salesforce, but primarily CRM applications. And our goal is to create easy, usable data quality applications, which every user within your company, every Salesforce user in this case, can use to clean up and create clean data, basically. So not an administrator should do all the work, but all the users, while they're working on their CRM and on their data, can help cleaning the data. We are a top 20 App Exchange partner. We have a lot of paying customers over the world. We have very good ratings on the App Exchange. And our other app, Duplicate Check for Salesforce, is the highest ranking data quality app on the App Exchange itself entirely. And we have got customers from small to very large. We can handle millions of records without any issues. So you can see some of our clients. We have clients all over the globe in retail, in non-profits, in education, well, you can name it basically. Everywhere where big data volumes are in place, our tools are handy and usable. So I think it's my time is short. So let's give Ruben the mic and let's give it up for him for a live demonstration of the tool itself.
Cool, thanks Stan for the introduction. Hi everyone, my name is Ruben. I'm the product owner for Plauti. As Stan already told, we have two tools, two applications. We have the Duplicate Check application, which some of you are probably familiar with already. But we have a second tool as well. It's called Record Validation. And Record Validation is the tool that I have the privilege to show you today. And yeah, when I explain record validation to people, I can basically categorize record validation in three categories. So basically, record validation is able to validate your phone number values, your email address value, and your home address value. And we can do that manually. So when you or your end users enter a record manually in Salesforce, we can validate these three services. So either email, phone, and home address, or all three, of course. We have some nice tools for end users in page layouts, which I'm going to show you in a second as well. The second big part of record validation is batch validation. So these three things we can do in batch as well. So we can take a look at all existing records in an object in Salesforce and validate all the values in terms of, again, phone number, emails, and home addresses. A third part is integration. We have an Apex API available. We have a REST API available. So you can integrate these services that we offer into your own projects as well, inside and outside of Salesforce. So I'm going to show you a couple of things, and for that I'm going to quit the slides and will take me to my demo environment here. I'm gonna refresh the page. So the first thing I would like to show you is how I can validate these values when I enter a new record in Salesforce. So the manual validation part. And I'm going to show you that by creating a new lead, which will bring up the entry page. And one cool thing that record validation has is an integration with the other tool that we have, duplicate check. So when you enter a new record and fill out the form and the information, you will see that at the top of the page, we will show you duplicate records based on your input. And for some reason, it's not firing. So I'm quickly going to refresh the page. Maybe my session expired. I'm going to do it again. Right, and you will see that based on the information that I put in, at the top of the page, you will see potential duplicate record that match my input. So instead of creating a new record, I can decide to working the existing one. So besides the validation options that I'm going to show you next, we of course have that integration with duplicate check, so you will not create duplicate records in the same process. So when I go down the entry page, you will see that we have an address field set over here, and I can enter an address. On the top right, I can define a default country, and currently my default country is set to the Netherlands. So now when I enter a street, I'm going to give away the street where I live. It's called the Amsterdamseweg 192, and I actually live at the sub-building 2. So it will give me, based on my partial inputs, a recommendation on a complete address that is found in the Dutch official address database. So I can pick the suggestion, and record validation will divide the values to the right fields. So I only put in a street and a house number, and record validation returns to me the city, the province, the postal code, and the country. Now this is for the Netherlands. We can do exactly this for over 240 countries worldwide. So basically any country you can think of, we support. So if you change the default country at the top right and then enter a street, then we will search for addresses in that country basically. And it's very easy to change the default country here. You can look use the search bar here, or you can scroll down the list of available countries. If I move on to the email address fields, then we are able to, of course, enter an email. And I'm going to enter my work email here. And at the second I move away from the field, you will see that record validation validates my inputs. And I can hover over the info icon here. I can see that record validation has something to say about my inputs. It's saying that the email format is correct and the mail servers are configured. So after you move away from the field, we quickly check if the format of the email is correct. So if everything that's supposed to be in an email address is actually there, but it also checks if the mail servers behind this domain are actually configured. So when I send an email here, I'm pretty sure that it will arrive and it will not bounce. So it gives me some very valuable information immediately about this email address. Another thing that we can tell about an email address, and let me change the domain here to, let's say, gmail.com. Record validation validates it, and if I hover over the info icon now, it says email domain is correct and the domain is listed as a free email domain. And if I change the domain again and go to a domain called Mailinator, for example, and duplicate check validates it, then you will see that the email domain is correct and the domain is listed as a free public disposable domain. So it can give you some very valuable information about your email addresses. and the things that we have to say about an email address. So if it's valid, if the format is okay, if the mail servers are configured, if it's a free public disposable domain, for example, we can store that information in a separate field, which is linked to this email field. So that allows you to afterwards report on all your email addresses, for example, and only take into account the email addresses that have mail servers configured for a certain campaign you want to run, which will bring down your bounce rate in email campaigns by a lot, of course, which will actually save you a lot of money. Yeah, very interesting tool, and we can do this for manual validation like we're doing now, but this same behavior applies to the batch validation, which we're going to take a look at a later point. Now, if I go to the phone area here, I've got 3 fields, and I'm just going to enter a mobile phone number in the first column. If I move away from the field, you will see that record validation validates the phone number. It standardizes the phone number and it turns it to an international format. So you can see that it added the country code for the Netherlands because it's a Dutch record here. If I have changed the country to, let's say, the United States, then it will format the phone number towards the United States format. We can decide ourselves to what format we want to format and validate towards. We can use a national format or an international format. We can use a commonly used E.164 format. You can set all these kind of formats where you want to format towards. You can set that in our setup. And you can change that per field, per phone field, basically. Now, if I make a mistake, of course, 1 digit too much, then record validation will immediately recognize that the phone number is incorrect and will show it to you or to your end users. So let's make it a nice phone number. If I hover over the info icon, then you will see that the phone number is correct and that the line type is defined as a mobile phone number. So yeah, we can not only format it and validate it, turn it to the international format for that specific country, but we can also see what kind of line type it is. Is it a mobile phone, or if I enter a landline here, it will format it towards the international format right away, and you will see that I get the information that is a fixed line. If I do another kind of phone type and move away from the field, you will see that this, for example, is a toll-free number. This information, again, we can save it in separate fields. You can afterwards report on it. This can give you some valuable information, maybe for your salespeople, that they know that they're calling a mobile phone, for example, or a landline, so they can prepare basically for the other side on what they can expect and how they can receive that call. Yeah, very interesting stuff to take a look at. So yeah, this is basically what we do when you manually enter a new record in Salesforce. Now we can work with any fields or any field sets. If I quickly switch to the setup here of record validation, which I've opened in the new tab, then on the left side, just as we have in duplicate check, we have an object setup. And if I go to the lead object here, you can find the fields that I've mapped to work with record validation. I go to the address tab here. You will see that I've currently mapped one field set for the existing address field set in leads. And for the email, I have defined 1 email field. And for phone, I've defined 3. And now if you want to add one, you can just click the add validation button, pick the field you want to use, link it to a country field, decide the format, and then right away we can work with it. This is all the configuration that needs to be done. So it's yeah, really easy to configure. So I'm going to cancel this one, and I'm going to talk about the next feature which I would like to show you. And for that, I'm going to open up a record. I've just opened the lead. If we go to the details, You will see that it has an address, it has an email address and a phone number. And at the top, we will see record validation in the form of a Lightning component. We refer to this Lightning component as RV Live, and you can add it to any page layout in any object in Salesforce. You can add it by editing the page. That will take you to the Lightning app builder, in which you can drag and drop the RV Live component on the page layout. And what it does, it will show you the status of data regarding a home address, a phone number, and an email address, or multiple ones if you have them in the record, of course. And right from the record page layout, you can validate those values. So I can click Validate All, and it will take you to a modal here in which you can see the original value. This is the address that's currently in my lead, but record validation has a suggestion. We can see a message here. The current address is verified up to city, but the suggestion contains an improved verified address up to house number. So we got two suggestions for you to choose between. You can pick the top one, which is closest to the address that I'm originally having. So you will see that it adds a state province. It will change the country format from PL to Poland. And yeah, it basically returns to me the official address that is in the address database of Poland. Now for the phone number, you will see that it standardized it. It removed the dashes. It turned it to a nice official format. And for the email address, yeah, I can find the information that the domain is correct and the domain is listed as a free email domain. So I can now decide to take this new address, take this new phone number, and click the Save button. Now, the nice thing about this component is that this is something you can make available to your end users. Like Stan mentioned in the beginning of the webinar, we have a vision that everyone should be responsible for data quality in Salesforce, or you should at least be able to make everyone responsible or to include them in the data quality improvement process. And by adding a component like this to a page layout, you will allow users to take a look at the data in the records they work with every day, the records that they know really well, and they can either deduplicate it with duplicate check. We have a similar component for duplicate check, or they can validate the important fields to make sure that they are validated right from the record validation live components. So yeah, a really nice tool to add to your page layouts. So I want to move on to the batch validation part. So these are tools that you can use to manually validate records. But we also have a tool to validate all existing records in a batch process. And to show you what that looks like, I'm going to open up the RV job page here. Just like duplicate check the DC job in record validation, we have the RV job, which looks kind of similar. I guess I've already ran one job, and at the top right, we can add a new job. And I'm going to show you how we can set up such a job. So I've just clicked that button and I can define a job name. For example, validate my leads. Then we can select the object we wish to run the search in. We can work with any object in Salesforce again. There are no limitations there. For now, I'm curious about my lead object. As a last step, I have to define what I actually want to validate in the lead object. I can choose to only use one service, for example, only take a look at my addresses, or only take a look at my email values. But I can also just select all three, and then it will basically validate all the fields that I've mapped with record validation in this batch process. That's exactly what I want to do for this particular job. So as a last step, I have to define what records I want to take into account. So it's referring to an RV status. So with record validation, when we touch a record or when we validated it before, or a certain value in a record before, then we basically define it with the RV status. For example, we can say that it's already perfectly well and we've validated everything and everything is set to green. And green in our terminology means that it's validated and you've got nice validated values in those records, which are accepted. You could decide to take them into account again if you want to recheck those records, but you don't have to. You can also leave it at new and it will only touch the new records. So like that, we have all these different statuses, and behind this info icon here, you can see exactly what they mean. If you check all the boxes, basically, we will take a look at all the records that are in your lead object, but it's entirely up to you, of course. So it is possible to apply a filter to this job to run this batch job on a subset of data. So for example, if you are going to run a new email campaign and you want to check the email addresses before you include them in the campaign and sending out the email itself, then yeah, put a filter on the campaign ID, for example. Take a look at the lead records that are in there. Make sure you don't send any emails to a lead that is going to bounce anyway, because that looks really bad, of course. I'm not going to add a filter for this job. I'm just going to start it. We'll see that the job is added here. And yeah, we can wait for it. It will take a couple of minutes to complete, but I've already created one, and this is the one that we're going to work in now. So I've got a few options. We can access the results, which I will do in a second. We can watch a report of everything that is done, which I'm also going to take a look at first. We can delete the job results, and we can start an automated process to process the validation results. This is what we're going to do in the end. So first of all, let's take a look at the report, which will take me here. And we've got the address validate, we got the email validate, and below we got the phone validate. And these graphs basically show me what we have to say about all the email addresses that we validated. The overall advice, for example, we've got 8 green email addresses, so they are perfectly fine. And we got 7 bad email addresses, so either the mail servers are not configured or the format of the email address that we have is incorrect. So we cannot send an email here. And if we take a look further, then you can see the reasons, or we can see the descriptions of what we have to say about that email address. So this is a nice page to get quick insights on your data, on your validation process, on the batch process. And yeah, you can learn from it and maybe run another batch job or work with the validation results that you've got. So I'm going to go back to the RV job page. You can see that the job completed, the one that we just started. But I want to see the results of my first job here. So I've got these records here. There are about 20 records which I validated. And if I take a look at, for example, this record here, which has a nice example that I know of, we've got a street, we got an email, and we got a phone. For the street, the current value has a postal code and the house number, which is in the street field. And we've got a country with a kind of weird format, NLD. You can write it as NL as well. What it comes down to is that record validation is able to recognize this as a really decisive address. We got the Bankstraat 45 in Zutphen. So yeah, record validation automatically competes the address. It divides everything to the right field where it's supposed to be. And it, of course, writes it down or defines it at the official address notation for the Netherlands. So I can decide to pick the suggested value, of course, over the current value. I can then take a look at the email address where I can see empty@gmail.x. Somebody definitely didn't want to give me their email address, so I can decide to remove it. For the phone number here, we can see that the phone number is incorrect. It has far too few digits, so this cannot be a phone number. So yeah, bad data, unfortunately. Just to show you that we can work with other countries as well, we got an address in Taiwan over here, which we were able to find an address in China, Tel Aviv, Israel, New York, and yeah, basically we can work with addresses from all over the world. That's a good thing to see. So we can process these validation results manually, which will take you some time, of course, especially if you are dealing with a lot of records. But we can also automatically process these results. And to understand how we can apply automatic processing features, it's a good thing to know that every time we validate a record, we have something to say about the records. So for example, here, we have to say that the current address is verified up to state regions, and the suggestion contains an improved verified address up to streets. So we got a really nice suggestion here. And if we move down, then here we've got current address is verified up to city, and the suggestion contains an improved verified address up to house number. Now, like this, we have all these different things to say about an address and about an email and about a phone. And it comes down to 3 categories. Basically, we can say the information that you have or the data that you have is incomplete and we cannot do anything with it. It's bad data. Or we can say the data that you have is okay. We are able to determine what it is, and we have some nice improvements for you. We have some nice suggestions for improvements. That's the second category. And the third category, we can say that the value that you currently have is perfect. It's written in the official notation for the database address for that specific country. So we got these 3 categories. So when we take a look at the auto process to automatically process results, yeah, we can work with these 3 categories as well. So I've clicked the auto process button here, and yeah, we can activate an auto process for 1 servers or 2 or all 3 at once, which is linked to a scenario. And these scenarios define basically actions based on these 3 categories that we have. And to show you that, I'm going to switch to the setup. It might sound a little bit complicated, but it's really easier than it might sound. I'm here in the RV setup, and on the left side, we got auto process. So I'm going there. And if I'm opening the address default scenario, which is currently applied, then you can see that all these things that we have to say, those 3 categories, they are defined here. So for example, you know, we've got a nice one here. Current address is incomplete or invalid, but still we were able to give a suggestion that has a improved verified address up to street level, for example. Well, in that case, we can link an action to that. And if record validation has a nice improvement for me, then in the automatic processing feature, I want to use that validation immediately. But if the address is invalid and we don't have a suggestion, then I want to just keep the original value, but I can also choose to remove the original value or to skip it for manual processing. So for these 3 categories, so if it's bad data, yeah, just keep it or remove it. If we have a nice suggestion which corresponds with all these status messages here, then I want record validation to use the validation, the improved suggestions that we have. And if we find it to be perfectly well, then I just want to keep the original value, of course. Now, in some examples, we have multiple suggestions. If we cannot pinpoint a certain address that you have to one specific address, then it's possible that we return to you multiple suggestions where you have to choose from. Now, normally the first suggestion that we offer is the most suitable suggestion. So you can decide to automatically use the first suggested value when you automatically process the validation results, but we can also choose to skip it for manual processing, and then you can take a look at the results manually. So if you're happy with your setup, you can be pretty strict, of course, but you can also be a little bit more lean towards the results that you're going to achieve. Then you can save it. You can go back to the batch step, and you can activate auto processing, and that will now either take the suggested values, or it will leave them in the job for me to manually review if there are multiple suggestions. And if I had bad data, I've configured record validation to keep that bad data and not remove it, because I don't want to lose information. I just want to keep it for now. But you could also decide, of course, to get rid of all the bad email addresses in one go, or to get rid of all the bad addresses that we cannot pinpoint to a specific address in one go. And if I access the results now, you will see that only the records where I have multiple suggestions, for example, this address in Poland here, I can pick the right one and save the record anyway. So yeah, that's basically all there is to it regarding batch validation. It's a really nice tool that works from within Salesforce, of course, to validate all records in Salesforce. We work with any object in there. We can either do email or phone or home addresses, but we can also do all three at once. And yeah, we can also process the results in Salesforce as well, which is really powerful, I think, to have in Salesforce. So the last part of the live demonstration, and before we go to a Q&A session. So if you have any questions, yeah, feel free to ask them now. You can use the Q&A panel in the Zoom panel. The last part of the things that I want to talk to you about is the integration part. Like I mentioned in the beginning, we have an Apex API and we have a REST API in which you can call upon email validation, address validation, or phone validation in your own projects in Salesforce and outside Salesforce. So yeah, if you have a web form, for example, outside Salesforce, you could apply our email validation there or our address validation. But also if you work with flows or processes in Salesforce, yeah, it's very easy to implement email validation or phone validation using our Apex API. Now, if you're interested in that, I would advise you to go to our website, support.recordvalidation.com. We have a development guide over there in which we show you some examples on how to utilize these services and how to implement and integrate them into your own projects. Very interesting, of course. So yeah, that's basically what I wanted to show you today. I'm very curious if some questions came in. So let's see by talking to Stan.
Yeah, thanks, Ruben. Thank you for the clear demonstration. And I think there are people need some more time to ask some questions. So please type in the questions now. In the meanwhile, I will start a poll, so that should pop up in your screen right now. Would you please answer our poll? There are 2 questions, so it's anonymous. So please answer that. For now, maybe you can tell us something about how the pricing works for record validation and the validations.
Yeah, sure. So in record validation, we work with a credit-based system. So when you validate a phone value or an email address value, we will charge you 1 credit. And if you validate a home address, we will charge you 10 credits. And we work with credit bundles, which you can buy from our website, recordvalidation.com. And you will basically buy 1 bundle until you run out of credits, and then you can recharge that bundle with new credits. So yeah, that's basically the system that we use. And if you want to find out more about pricing and about that structure, then I would definitely advise you to go to recordvalidation.com/pricing. but you're also welcome to shoot us an email at support@plauti.com, for example, or to sales@plauti.com, which we can talk to you about the pricing structure as well.
Great, thank you. I think your presentation was really clear and not many questions. So could you go to the next slide, please? Okay, so if there are still any questions, please type them in now. You can do it in the chat window or in the Q&A section. For the people who answered the poll, thank you very much. Yeah, there's one question coming in right now. That's perfect. So, what data are record validated against? Some apps use Dun & Bradstreet. What does Plauti use? I think I can answer that. We validate addresses, phone numbers, and email addresses independently. So we do not check at the moment if the email address you are having matches the postal address you are having or the phone number. So we do not check if it's combined, if it's correct. We only tell you if that specific postal address is correct, and we validate that against postal data, which we have from 240 countries worldwide. And the same goes for email. So we validate your email address against email servers. And we have quite some detail on phone numbers. So we validate against that phone number library as well, but we do not check, like Dun & Bradstreet does, if the combination of data is correct as well. Okay. For now, so we've got quite some webinars set up this coming week. So today we did record validation. Next week, we've got a session about how to develop with duplicate check. After that, we have a session about duplicate check or finding and merging your existing records, and we go in depth how you can do that. Same goes for how to do duplicate prevention within your sales environment for your end users, so how your end users can work with that. We've got some automations, so how would you block duplicates which are coming in via your automation platform or your web to leads or etc. And the last one, which is pretty important, is setting up scenarios and search indexes for better duplicate results. So that's very interesting webinar as well. You can find them all on our Plauti site on the blog section. If you are interested in starting out and start trying record validation, if you didn't do that before, you can go to the App Exchange, search for record validation. You can just install it in your sandbox or in your production. You get a couple of credits to test it out. Or if you want more in-depth questions with a more in-depth demonstration, you can plan something with sales. And make sure you visit our knowledge base at support@recordvalidation.com, because there's a lot of information how to set up and how to use the tool itself. If you still have questions, contact us via support@plauti.com, or if it's commercially, contact us via sales@plauti.com. And I think that concludes the webinar. Thank you for polling. And thank you for your questions. And thank you for attending. I hope to see you in one of our next webinars, and then we talk to you later. Have a great day and see you next time.